From the Tata Motors Nano and the 1 millionth Jeep to the Lamborghini Gallardo and Ford's premier automotive group, we cover it all on this episode of the Drive History Podcast, coming your way right now.
It's time to cruise the highways and byways of the auto industry's past, present, and future. Join us in exploring the vehicles, people, events, and places that have shaped the way we move. This is the Drive History Podcast.
Hey Jordan, thanks for coming to work this week.
You know, everybody needs a break sometimes.
Tell me about it. Welcome to another episode of the Drive History Podcast. I'm Brian Corey, joined as always by Jordan Stead, who's sporting a fresh tan.
Fresh out of my Palm Springs 5-day getaway. So yeah. What did I see there? I saw a lot of V12 engines. People love their luxurious V12s. Not their fast V12s, just their luxurious V12s.
They go brum, 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 brum.
Or they just make no sound at all.
True. Did you get to drive any V12s? Probably not.
I did not. The only thing I drove was a Chrysler Pacifica wagon.
With a V12?
Exactly. And by wagon, I mean van.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest with you, maybe it's my mid-30s calling, but that thing was kind of sweet.
They're not doing it wrong. I mean, there's not a lot of companies that feel like are still making a good van, and Chrysler's not making much of anything, but they make the Pacifica, and come on, it does what it needs to do. And it looks pretty sporty.
It wasn't
Which is
bad.
A weird thing to say.
That's a very weird thing to say, but I agree.
Was it black on black on black?
It was, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, a little rental car situation. But you know what was the nicest part about it was the ride. I was very impressed by the ride. Super luxuriously supple and very floaty in a good way. And I wouldn't think that a base model Chrysler vehicle was going to feel that way, but it was like you could session this thing on a road trip. No problem.
Oh, for sure. And I feel like they put their engineering prowess into one vehicle at Chrysler for once, and the result was the Pacifica, and now everybody wants a minivan.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of into it. I mean, obviously, is it as great as the Toyota Sienna XSE hybrid van, which is like the GOAT van for everybody? It's the ultimate dad van.
True.
It wasn't that, but it was a step in the right direction.
Those are the cars a lot of the car Instagram shooters use too. Those Toyota Siennas, I see them all the time, modded for camera cars and stuff like that.
For sure, and you can dangle out of the side or dangle out of the back or whatever you got to do. Ask me how I know.
How do you know?
I've used the camera here and there.
Well, let's get into it. This week we are covering March 19th through March 25th, and we've got some fun stuff coming your way. We're going to kick it off with a different Chrysler product. However, it was not Chrysler back then, and it's not even Chrysler now. What is it? Stellantis? Is it something else?
I think so. And I was noticing, spoiler alert, that there's a bunch of different mentions of Chrysler and acquisitions of different companies this week, and I didn't even know any of this. So it's going to be good to go over.
Welcome to the Automotive History Podcast.
That is automotive history.
Yeah. March 19th, 1952, the 1 millionth Jeep is produced. The Jeep, of course, was developed out of necessity for the U.S. Army, originally produced by Willys Overland. And before that, the design had actually come from a different company. The name is escaping me. But Willys and Ford were the original manufacturers of the Jeep during World War II, which started our production for that started about 1941. And so in just under a decade, 1 million Jeeps.
Wow.
Not too bad.
Under a decade. 100,000 of them a year?
And for half that time, it was all military production.
Right.
So to shift into civilian production, they came out with the Jeepster and all the, the Jeep trucks.
Right.
What do they call that
Gladiator?
nowadays? Well, that's what it is now.
Yeah.
But it was, the original version of that. So yeah, Jeep became a thing out of necessity, and people just loved it because they came back from the war and they're like, oh, that's the same car I drove in Germany or drove in the Pacific Islands, and I can drive one on the streets now.
Weird. Yeah. We've talked about Jeeps in the past on the podcast. Never been a big Jeep guy, but I've never really spent a whole lot of time in them.
Well, you just drove a 2019 Jeep
Renegade. Yes.
What a name.
Yeah, shout out Marley for putting her car in the shop so she got a loaner. And somehow this loaner was a Jeep Renegade, which is, I guess it kind of compares to her. What does she have?
Hyundai.
A Veo?
No, not a Sonata. What's the other one?
I don't know.
Little Hyundai sedan.
Yeah, it's like a mini Jeep version of a little tiny sedan. Is basically
totally.
What it is.
And they're both white.
That's true. And I had to drive it because I just wanted to. And it reminded me of how I almost bought one a couple of years ago in the COVID years. I was looking for like a cheap 4x4, ideally manual, maybe turbo vehicle. And as a former Fiat Abarth owner, I discovered that the Jeep Renegade of certain years had the same transmission and the same 1.4 liter turbo that the Fiat Abarth had in it, because of course these were all Chrysler products. So you can literally have a Jeep Renegade driving around in 4x4 with a manual, a turbo, and a four-banger, sounding exactly like a Fiat Abarth. So if anyone's interested in that,
a little bit like a unicorn.
It's just a total unicorn. And I think they only made it for a couple of years, but they're hard to find. And when they come out in that trim and that spec, people are interested in them. I almost overpaid for almost 20 grand or something, which God knows it was probably that same price when it came out years before.
Yeah,
but
right.
COVID prices are putting it up there. But anyway, I almost bought one once. But after driving this today, I'm glad I didn't buy it.
Yeah, not very exciting.
No.
Gets you where you need to go.
Yeah.
March 19th, 1954, the Nash Metropolitan goes on sale. This is an interesting car. It was essentially the Geo Metro of the 1950s, both in terms of its size and the fact that it was built for fuel efficiency, but also that it was an international collaboration, whereas the Geo was like General Motors and I think Mitsubishi perhaps built those. It was Nash, which was based in Wisconsin, and Austin, which was based in the UK. And they built and designed these cars in the UK, sold them as Nash vehicles. So they're like a stubby little short version of an American land yacht from the 50s. They sit 4 people. I think they have a little 4-cylinder engine and probably got about 30 miles per gallon, which was phenomenal in the 1950s. Of course, this was when everybody wanted a second car coming out of the war. People had some income that they didn't know what to do with.
Huh. The more you know.
The more you know. March 19th, 1999, Ford established the Premier Auto Group. At the time, it was made up of Lincoln, Mercury, Jaguar, and Aston Martin.
God, that's the worst name, by the way. Premier Auto Group. That's like the shitty family-owned used car sales place that you see in any city in the world.
Totally.
Premier Auto Group.
And you already know what the logo looks like.
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
like an outline of a sports car with like a blue streak over it.
Yeah, just like a blue circle with 2 black slashes through it for some reason.
No sense.
Yeah.
The Premier Auto Group would later also include Land Rover and Volvo. Ford acquired all of these brands at a total cost of about $17 billion. When it all came crashing down starting in 2008, Ford started to unload them, and by 2011, the Premier Auto Group was no longer, as well as Mercury was gone. And they came under the umbrella. We talked about this before as the Ford One movement, to really just focus on Ford and Lincoln.
I see.
So they lost a ton of money on that. I was trying to find the exact figure, but no dice.
2 things about this. I was like, was this a deal? Like $17 billion for all those car companies? It like feels like a deal. And then I realized I'm talking 2024 money, where, it's just normal to be walking around with people being billionaires all the time.
Right.
So I don't even know what that is with inflation. Who knows? Maybe 30 billion? Who knows? Who even knows?
I bet it's a lot more than that, because I was surprised too, and I should have looked that up earlier, but I didn't because I'm a terrible journalist.
It seems like a deal. Let's just put it that way.
It does. I mean,
yeah.
Land Rover, Jaguar, and Aston Martin alone. I mean, those nameplates, there were something now. Although I think Jaguar was just like at the very bottom, along with Land Rover, of Consumer Reports like worst vehicle brands.
Yes, that was that era. Although
No, now. This year.
Now.
Yeah.
Wow. I also did not know that Ford owned Aston Martin for a while.
Yeah. I think it's surprising to a lot of people. You just don't associate the two.
I think Aston Martin's probably pretty happy that no one associates the two.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
March 19th, 2005, John DeLorean dies. You probably know him best as the creator of the DeLorean DMC-12, made famous in Back to the Future. But he had a long, illustrious career in the auto industry before that. He is essentially the creator of, well, a lot of people give him credit as being the father of the muscle car, creating the Pontiac GTO in about 1964.
Shout out Donut Media's coverage of the John DeLorean, the life of John DeLorean. It's an amazing episode.
Yeah, I mean, his life beyond the car world is pretty insane. I mean, it's all tied together, but per what you're talking about and like all the movies about him, you know, he got busted for selling coke to fund his car or his car company. Ultimately was found not guilty. What's interesting today is that his daughter, I think her name's Catherine DeLorean, is trying to revamp the family name by essentially selling body kits for the C8 Corvette that are DeLorean inspired, is my understanding of what's happening. So be on the lookout for that. Gullwing C8s.
Wow, that was like such an insane paragraph that you just said. I'm trying to process that whole thing. That's so bizarre. I thought you were gonna say she's like trying to revive the DeLorean, like make the car or like something. It's like, no, I'm trying to make a body kit for a totally different car. It's really bizarre.
Well, I mean, I think that it ultimately is a desire to revive DeLorean as a brand, and there is a company that actually owns the DeLorean Motor Company still, and they'll sell parts, like all the OEM parts that are left over from the original cars.
Wonder how much that cost. I bet those are $1 bazillion.
The original DeLoreans, yeah.
Yeah, or just like buying OEM parts for DeLorean. It's
sure.
Probably just a fool's errand.
Well, there's only one place to get them. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, March 20th, 1928. The founder of the Packard Motor Car Company, James W. Packard, dies. Packard was, of course, one of the great car companies that kind of fell apart by the 1930s, would squeeze by until the 50s when financial difficulties forced it under. I don't have a whole lot to say about it.
Me neither.
Great. March 20th, 1936. The BMW 326 makes its world debut. It featured BMW's first hydraulic braking system and could be had as a 4-door sedan or a 2 or 4-door cabriolet. I just want to say I wish there were more 4-door convertibles.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the one that's in my head right now.
Probably like the Rolls-Royce, so like the newish one.
Oh, yeah. Good call. I'm thinking like a mid to late 90s Toyota Solara, or is that a 2-door? I don't know why that's the car popping in mind.
I think they're just so rare. I have to imagine it has to do with like rigidity and that kind of thing.
Well, it's like I was mentioning a couple episodes ago when I rented an M4 that's a hard top convertible. I was amazed at how different it felt when we put the top down than when it was up. And I guess that makes sense because the only other convertible I've spent a lot of time in and drove before was a 95 Miata that I owned that already had a soft top. So whether the soft top is up or down, it's going to feel the same.
Sure.
But a car that has a body that goes from a hard top to no top is a pretty different situation. And that actually explains why I was so shocked by the difference.
See, it's just nice to talk things out every once in a while.
You got science, man. It's all science. Also, I'm going to potentially embarrass myself worse than I have on this podcast yet, but definitely not as much as I will in the future, by asking, what is the naming situation with BMW? I don't understand the numbers of things. I know that the first number, like the 3 or 4 or 5 series, the car is getting bigger, it's getting longer, right? I don't understand the next 2 numbers.
I don't think you should be embarrassed, or I should be embarrassed because I have no idea. think that it's probably nope, I got nothing.
Because some of them repeat, and then every other year it seems to go back to the year it was 2 years ago, and then they'll change it by one number.
Is it an engine size thing? Like, is it like a?
I don't think so, because they've been using
a 2.3 liter engine.
I don't know. I mean, they've been using so many similar engines for so long too that doesn't make sense either. Like, I don't know, what's the difference between a 325 and a 326?
One.
Yes, but why? Like, what is the naming convention difference here? Is there a meaning behind it, or is it just like every year BMW is like, we're just going to switch this up a little bit just to make it seem newer?
I'm guessing that, but they're going to run out of numbers eventually.
Also, equally as confusing is their generation naming, like the F versus the G series, and then the number following that. I'm like, what are these numbers?
I mean, I feel like that's constant in a lot of car companies, like the Minis, the R56, like I had, but now it's like something else. And like, in all these companies that do, a letter and a number, they probably have their own internal designation as to why they do that. But I wish they would just call things like the Volvo cool car.
Yeah, there you go.
the Volvo wagon.
Well, like if you think about it, Audi does this really well. Similar naming convention of like the number, the A3, A4, A5, A6. The car is just getting bigger or longer or more doors or whatever. Right. But then that's it. There's no additional numbers going on there.
So you just know by the letter and the number what series and how big it is.
Yeah, and the lettering designates essentially like the trim level, right? You've got the sure. A and then the S and then the RS, and that just makes way more sense to me than the BMW naming convention.
Also, they have like 8 series. Like that's a lot of cars.
But yeah, both of them do actually, right? Yeah, Audi goes up to a Q8, and BMW goes up to a M8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
8 series, yeah. Wow.
Calm down, BMW. March 21st, 1920, NASCAR pioneer Fonty Flock is born. I really wanted to include this because he just has a great quote, and it illustrates where NASCAR came from so well. He was quoted as saying, "I used to deliberately seek out the sheriff and get him to chase me." And he's referring to his time as a moonshiner growing up in the South. And that's where so many people got their taste for speed and ended up, putting that to use on the track. Also interesting, his brother Tim was a NASCAR race car driver, and for almost an entire season, he had a monkey that would ride with him. The 1950s.
Wow. Yeah, it's like a movie, but it's real life. Amazing name and total badass quote. And by the way, his monkey was named Jocko Flocko. And from here on out, I will only be addressed as Jocko Flocko on this podcast.
You heard it here first, folks.
Love it.
Jordan the Jocko.
Love it.
March 21st, 1923, the 1 millionth Buick is built.
And we know what color it was when it rolled off the line. What color was it, Brian?
I'm going to say black.
No. Only one color.
Champagne.
Champagne, brother. That's it. They only made Buicks in one color.
Bad. Yeah. Even back then, only 60-year-olds drove them. March 21st, 1960, F1 champ Ayrton Senna is born. He made his F1 debut on March 25th, 1985 in Brazil. He'd go on to win 3 drivers' championships driving for McLaren, but sadly he died in a crash in 1994.
Right.
At that time, he held 6 wins at Monaco, which was a record, and was the 5th most successful F1 driver in terms of race wins. Died doing what you love.
Kind of speaks for itself, honestly.
Truth. March 21st, 2000, Daimler Chrysler announced it had purchased 34% of Mitsubishi Motors.
See, this is another thing. I read this, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I knew that, but it just got filed away in like the annals of my mind somewhere as totally irrelevant information. But
totally. I mean, I feel like this era of car manufacturing was just people, like different companies were going place to place, like just trying to find funding, and it was 30% here, 50% there, and there were these weird partnerships. But if you think about it, none of those companies. No, Mitsubishi's still around. I take that back.
I mean, Barely.
Yeah, but
I
I know
had
you
to be
like that
reminded.
SUV.
Yeah, I had to be reminded the other day when I saw whatever it was. What did we say it was? Mitsubishi.
Murano? No, it's a Nissan.
You're right. That's a Nissan. It was called it was an SUV. It was basically like the most run of the mill mid-sized SUV. But actually, you know what? It looked kind of cool, to be honest.
I know, they're not bad.
Yeah, but anything else? I mean, I don't even know. Do they make any other cars right now?
I think they have a car and they have an SUV.
Mirage?
Maybe. That's the old car. Maybe they still make that.
Yeah. It goes to show you how
It
much
is a
we know.
Mirage.
Yeah.
March 21st, 2008. It's announced the Smart for 2 would come to the U.S. It's a French-built, German-owned, U.S. sold vehicle. Of course, they sold them in other places as well, but it's just kind of an interesting dynamic. It's the same thing about all these partnerships.
Smart for 2. Any relationship to Smart Car?
That is the Smart car.
Oh, okay. That's the name of the Smart Car.
Yeah.
Smart for 2.
Smart for 2. Have you seen the one that runs around town with the banger exhaust on it?
I have. And did you know that Brabus made a special edition of it?
No.
Yeah. Like high-end Mercedes tuner made a Brabus edition of that same car.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can find those all over the place.
Yeah. Actually, the only reason I know that is because of a YouTube channel that I've been following for years. His name is Steph AB TV, who was a Fiat 500 Abarth owner who I learned about him when I had my Abarth and followed his channel, and then he went on to buy a bunch of different stuff. But he at one point owned a Brabus Smart for 2.
There you go.
Yeah. God, that sounds so dumb to say. Smart for 2.
It's the legal name. It's like naming your kid Richard and calling him Dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout
Shout out my father-in-law, by the way, whose name is Richard.
Yeah,
Rich.
I don't mean that in a negative way. March 22nd, 1905, California passes a rule requiring vehicle registration. I believe it's the first state to do so. Before that, you just got to have a car and nobody knew about it.
God, that sounds so nice.
There's so much paperwork with everything.
Yeah, I've been chasing after registration for a 2002 Tahoe that I have that I bought off my mother and father-in-law, and it's like I don't even know what's going on. Like, they lost the title, the registration. I renew it up here, but then I have to drive down to Seattle to have my father-in-law sign it so I can drive it legally because he's still the registered owner. But I paid them for it, and then it's like, I don't even know what's going on. It's just going to live forever in purgatory.
Well, now your dog owns the car.
That's true. It is only the dog hauler.
March 22nd, 1983, AM General wins a government contract to build the Humvee. It's a $1 billion contract to build 55,000 of the high-mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicles for the Army and other military operations. This, of course, would become Hummer in the public sphere, mostly thanks to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who championed the idea of selling it to the public. What a great idea.
Yeah, the most Arnold idea.
For sure. For sure. I've never been in a Hummer.
You know, I was thinking that earlier, and I was trying to ask myself, have I? And I don't think I have. But the only thing I can think of that's relevant to this conversation is, if I'm not mistaken, the H2, when it came out in the early 2000s, I believe,
Sounds about right. had
a bunch of weird and different transmission and engine options. One of them being, if I'm not mistaken, a 5-cylinder manual.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then there was also a diesel, and then there was also a 6, and I don't know if it ever had a V8 in it, but I was shocked to learn that there was a 5-cylinder
Hummer
manual as well.
Just pretty sweet, and you could have it as a truck.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
Actually, there was in Gone in 60 Seconds, the Nicolas Cage version, they steal a Hummer H2 truck with a manual transmission.
No way.
Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
Now you know.
Huh.
God, that's a great movie.
I got to rewatch it.
It's classic.
I think I've maybe, oh my God, have I only seen it one time? It's movie night soon.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Get that popcorn out. Moving up to March 23rd, 1901, the first Chicago Auto Show opens. I really think it's interesting that this is still a concept where we take all the new cars from all the manufacturers and put them under one roof, and you go and you walk around and you're supposedly supposed to figure out what you want to buy. I do think it's a dying tradition. I feel like the attendance of these shows is getting progressively lower, and they're trying to resuscitate them at a high level. Like the Detroit Auto Show is kind of like the original one, and they try to do all these things to get more people to come in the summer because it was in January forever, and who wants to go to Detroit in January? But that didn't work, so now it's going back to January so it can be the first auto show of the year. I think the one that does get attended is maybe like the LA Auto Show, and the European ones, I forget, like Geneva. Is that still a thing?
It feels like a thing that hasn't died yet, but has had a long and slow decline because of the constant availability of the internet and news.
Exactly. Totally.
You know what I mean? Like there was a time when you went to this show to literally be like, oh, these are brand new. These are coming out. I'd never even heard of it. Haven't seen it. But I mean, I'm reading articles about cars that are coming out in 2 years.
Right.
You know, and I'm seeing photos of them now for 2 years before they even come out. So why would I go and just see the same car sitting on a strip of white rug and the the local
because you can get
sportsplex.
all of the shopping bags and written materials and free pens, and there's some good freebies at those things. But yeah,
I did like going to them as a kid though.
For sure. I mean, I remember seeing some pretty iconic cars at those things, like the SSR, and I have a vague memory of the Tesla Roadster being at the original Tesla Roadster. Cool. Yeah, so. You're right. They served a purpose for a long time, but so did real estate agents. And now I only need them for paperwork.
There you go.
March 23rd, 1957, the Chevrolet Corvette SS makes its one and only racing appearance at the 12 Hours of Sebring. I want to include this because I wanted to get your take on endurance racing. 12 hours, 24 hours.
Donut does a lot of informing about endurance racing. I feel like they talk about it a lot. All these different races that I'm not plugged into that world at all.
Sure.
It's not something I've really ever even thought about or kind of been interested in. But I think my just initial thought is it's such a different way of testing a car and a person. It's such a different game than how fast can we go, how quickly can it turn. It's like the opposite of time attack, right? Or like a track day. It's like, how long can this human being and this vehicle just remain intact and or not falling asleep?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a deadly game.
It sounds like shit. Like being in a race like that sounds just brutal.
It's so true. What if you have to go to the bathroom?
I think that there's a lot of the pee in the suit thing.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're switching drivers and you're just sitting in somebody else's pee.
Hey, gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
March 23rd, 1970, American Motors introduces the AMX/3. It's an upscale sports car, but it only resulted in the production of 6 prototypes. I saw one at the Chicago Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. They have a barn find section every year that Ryan Brute, the auto archaeologist, curates, and they found one of these cars that had been sitting in a barn for a long time. They kind of remind me of like Lotuses from the 70s, just they're like a little wedge car.
Oh, cool.
And I think there was probably a lot of potential, especially for AMC at the time, to create something a little different, but it's unfortunate it never went into production.
I like how this line is, but the production ended after 6 pre-production prototypes.
Right. Did I read that like that? I hope
like
not.
I like it. Throwing them for a loop, keeping you on your toes.
Yeah. March 23rd, 1992, also about the 12 Hours of Sebring. Maybe I put both of these in here to take you for a 24-hour ride. But in 1992, Nissan placed second at the 12 Hours of Sebring. I believe it was their highest placement to date.
Wonder what car it was.
That is a good question. Probably something factory built to be a race car.
Yeah.
Womp womp.
I don't know. It sounds horrible
Still.
to do it. Like who says
5 minutes
I want to
later, you're
drive
still
12
not into
hours?
it. I think they split it up. I think there's a 4-hour limit.
Still, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a long time. March 23rd, 2009, India's Tata Motors, which just prior to this or just after this, bought Jaguar and Land Rover from Ford. I can't remember the exact date. We've talked about that before. But on March 23rd, 2009, it introduced its ultra cheap $2,000 two-cylinder Nano in Mumbai.
More. We need more.
I knew you were going to have
We need
something to say
more.
about this.
We need more. We've talked about this before. We're probably going to talk about it 100 times in the future. Can somebody come out with a true sub $20,000 car, a little mid-size compact?
I say it's
mid-size
15.
compact?
Like, come on. Like,
Yeah, 17, but like 20 after tax or
Sure.
something. Yeah, but like a not a compact, like a
Like
little crossover. Like maybe it's like a Subaru Crosstrek style vehicle, maybe a little bit bigger.
like a key car out of
Sure.
Japan.
All the thing has
Or
got to
K-car.
have
I say key.
is some sort of a shitty all-wheel drive system and Apple CarPlay. I've said it before. I'll say it again.
You can
That's-
buy golf carts like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you need. You'd sell a zillion of those things. You could make them out of paper mache, and they could be all-wheel drive and have CarPlay in them, and everybody would be buying them. I'm telling you right now.
I
Do
love-
it. Somebody do it.
Arts and craft cars.
Yeah.
Perfect. March 24th, 1948, the last Lincoln Continental Mark I is manufactured. I feel like they're about to bring back the Continental, probably as an EV.
Did it leave? Is it gone?
Is it still a car? I don't think it's a car right now.
I don't know. I think maybe of all cars, Lincoln is probably the car brand that I know the least about.
That's fair. Matthew McConaughey is the
That's
spokesperson.
it. That's it. That's literally all I know. Yeah. And in The Matrix 1, when Neo gets that shrimp thing sucked out of his stomach, I'm pretty sure that was in an old Lincoln. Might be wrong. Roast me if I'm wrong.
There you go. March 24th, 1970, Buddy Baker drives the number 88 Chrysler Engineering Dodge Charger Daytona to 200 miles per hour inside Talladega, marking the first time that a car broke the 200 mile per hour barrier in a closed circuit. That was a production vehicle. You could drive that off the lot. Well, this one had a few aftermarket components, but these were the days of true stock car racing. And to be able to drive off the lot and get close to 200 miles per hour in 1970 seems pretty freaking impressive.
That's true. I wonder what they would have thought of the Hellcat, though. And I'll save most of my unbridled hatred for another episode on this sort of tiny topic, but the Dodge Charger topic. I just saw the Dodge Charger all-electric
Oh, yeah.
debut video
Yeah.
that was put out.
How'd you feel about that?
It was like an 11-minute short film or something. That was like half short film period piece for some reason, and other half of it was just like it was the Dodge CEO or someone talking about the new car and its features. And I think, here's my hot take of the episode, I think it was the dumbest piece of promotional media I've ever seen for anything ever.
Wow.
I was alone in my office watching this video, and I was truly embarrassed. Like, I was cringing. It is the lamest and dumbest video I've ever seen to promote something.
This is why you love video so much.
Yeah, by the way, I'm a video producer by trade. But I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that, like, this Halo car of this brand was put out, and this was the piece of promotional material that they chose to produce and spend God knows how much money on, and then to release to the general public. It is truly something to behold or to never see ever in your life.
Well, now I have to watch it.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Dodge Charger, Electric Charger debut 2024 or whatever it is.
Plus the inline six.
Right. Yeah. You know that when the announcement of the car, the coolest part of it is that it's going to have
I see.
an IC in it is the coolest part of the announcement, as opposed to the Halo electric version of the same car. You know that you fucked up. But anyway, go watch this video. Tell me that I'm right, because I am. and don't enjoy it.
I already love it. March 24th, 2003, the Lamborghini Gallardo is launched in Geneva. We've talked a little bit about Lamborghini before. Actually, oh man, the day we're recording this, I should look it up, but I'm not going to because I don't want to bust out the keyboard. The designer of the Lamborghini Mira and a plethora of other cars just died today.
Oh.
Basically the original supercar, the Mira out of like 1970-ish. So.
Wow. Rip. Are you a Lamborghini Ferrari guy?
I got one of each. Like, so, come on.
Fair answer.
Well, what about you? I don't think I can answer that. I have driven a Lamborghini and a Ferrari. I got to spend a little more time in the Ferrari and actually like drive it on the streets, and that was fun. But it was like a 2016 California, automatic, whatever. I forget what they call those transmissions.
Sure.
But it was fun. It was fast and it sounded cool.
Yeah.
The Lamborghini I drove in a parking lot as fast as I could.
Yeah, I have driven both in a small volume, but I think from a styling and an ethos standpoint, I'm way more of a Ferrari guy.
I could understand that. From a like historical aspect of it, I really enjoy Lamborghini because, as I talked about in the little solo episode, Lamborghini had bought a Ferrari, or several of them, had problems with them, went to Enzo, was like, yo, Enzo, the clutch sucks. Like, are you going to fix this? And he's like, no, keep making tractors, because he was a tractor guy.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I'm going to make my own car. And one of the greatest rivalries in automotive history was born.
Dumbest but best origin story.
Right?
Yeah.
There was a time when Lamborghini was making tractors and supercars.
Wonder if they're fast tractors.
They plowed.
Nice.
March 25th, 1930, Larry Shinoda, designer of both Corvettes and Mustangs, is born. He, one of his original design projects was the 1959 Chevrolet, particularly on the fins. And
oh yeah,
I love those fins. My dad's first car was a 59 Chevy, and they're like cat eyes. If I ever have the opportunity, I would like to own one of those cars someday. But in terms of Corvettes and Mustangs, he probably saw most of his work on the 63 Chevrolet Corvette, and then later he ended up working at Ford and kind of led the charge with the Mustang Boss from 69 to 70, 71, I think. But he didn't last very long at Ford.
Had no idea that the Corvette and the Mustang was designed by the same guy.
Well, just particular models.
Sure. Still, that's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, right.
Didn't know that.
I feel like that's a pretty iconic career right there.
Yeah, no kidding.
March 25th, 1985, Nissan begins production of the Sentra in Tennessee. I think this marks the first time that Nissan began producing cars in the USA.
Okay. I was like, where's Brian going with this? Why did he put this on this
I
list?
love Tennessee and Nissan Sentras.
Yes. There was if I'm not mistaken, a Nismo Sentra SER, which is like a very tuned up version of the Sentra. And they're really hard to find, and I think they're kind of cool. And they came in a stick. And I think I watched a YouTube video once of a guy who made like 12 different bespoke exhaust setups for an old SCR and tried to make it sound like an F1 car, and he basically did. So do some YouTubing, because there was a really cool video out there like that.
Huh.
But they look they just look like a regular Sentra, but they were hotted up and had some extra sauce.
Yeah. I appreciate that little sleeper action.
For sure.
Nice.
Speaking of not sleepers, this next one, read it.
Right? March 25th, 2005, the Saturn Sky is introduced. It's a companion to the Pontiac Solstice and the Opel GT in Europe. What do you think about these, Jordan?
I think Rage has blocked out the memory of what the name of the Saturn was that my stepmom had as I was growing up. It was this little coupe, this blue, 2-door.
Ion.
Was it an Ion?
I think so.
God, that.
Or was it the 3-door?
Good question.
Had the little suicide door on one side.
What was that one
I
called?
think that was the Ion.
Okay.
That's what
There
I
was the
thinking of.
Ion, and there was this Saturn View,
I think that's the SUV.
and then there was the Sky, which I don't even know what that is.
No, that's the little, like the coupes, the little convertible ones. Like we saw one.
That's the Solstice.
That's the Pontiac,
Pontiac.
Solstice. Saturn Sky. Yeah.
Okay.
Same car. It was all General Motors.
Oh, yes. I knew that. Yes. The Solstice is kind of cool.
So it's just the Saturn version of that.
Okay, that makes me mad, and now it's not cool to me anymore. But the whatever that Saturn was, there was this dark blue 2-door coupe that my stepmom had. Probably maybe like a late 90s model or whatever. Wait, no, it wouldn't have been late 90s. Would it have been? It would have been.
Could have been.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
That thing was a piece of shit, man. It was the ultimate tin can. Like when you shut the door, the whole car sounded like it was going to fall apart. Like you could, yeah, totally. You could hear like the screws coming loose as you were driving down the road.
Well, what's Saturn's slogan?
I have no idea.
A different kind of car company.
Are you for real?
Yeah. And on that note,
Get bent, Saturn.
they did.
Good.
They blew some rings.
Oh, that's unreal. Wow. Well, what a sad thing to end on for this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. Thanks for listening. Give us a follow, give us a share, and get ready to tune in for next week. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Rock and roll.